on the last episode of Living the Dream. And I also still want to dig a little bit deeper into how important or not, it is to your success. Do you feel like you can be successful without a tribe or without specific types of relationships? And if so, how does having relationships add to your success if you can even do it without them? So how vital is it? Do you need them? Or let's talk about that for a second.
Okay, I'm glad you asked. I used to think that you didn't. I used to think that, it could be a one-man show and it's just like, hey, listen, bro, I'm good. If I do, I'm good. I'm good if I don't.
For sure.
But I feel a little different about that now. And here's the thing about your tribe. It's not just a place to celebrate your successes, but it's also a place where you can process your failures as well. Because I think your tribe, they provide loving correction and support that will ultimately lead to your success. So when you look at the elements of a tribe, it's like, yes, this is a place where I can celebrate my successes and these people can celebrate with me, but I can also process my failures, which gives me a safe space to go through those transitions. And that helped me come out successful anyway, because it was kind of like, hey, I don't have to have a place where I only show my strength.
Welcome to an IEXIST podcast. Our entire mission can be summed up in one phrase: becoming all that we are. It is our belief that fulfillment doesn't come from changing into things you aren't, but rather from becoming everything that you already are. And ultimately, we're here to press and empower you to lead lives that are full of fulfillment. We've dedicated this specific podcast to the dream, not to having the dream or even talking about the dream, but to living the dream. The reality is that there's a stark difference between having a dream and manifesting one. Here you'll gain insight and wisdom keys directly from some of the water walkers of our generation, dream practitioners, those who have decided to tread paths where there were none, to step out into only what they could see. Come take a peek into the minds of some who, from within, create our world's most magnificent realities. I'm the creator and host, Brian Farr, and this is the Living the Dream podcast. All right, welcome to the 13th episode of Living the Dream, the podcast. I am your host, Brian Farr, and before we jump straight into the second half of A Tribal Blessing featuring Keith Richardson, let me start off by saying thank you for tuning in today. If this is your first time tuning in, you'll definitely want to catch the first half of this conversation. It's something that I have no doubt that you'll enjoy. This was a very fun interview, and you'll also want to get in on the 11 episodes before that. All of them have very great information in them. You should definitely check those out. I also want to go ahead and plug my book here, A New Home. It's something that I actually wrote a couple years ago, but I'm calling it Book of the Decade for the current decade that we're in. You'll see why once you read it. I also call it the Bible of being yourself. One part due to the design, the other part due to the actual content that is literally some of the greatest information you can receive on self-discovery and that journey. Go check it out. You can get your personal copy at becomingallthatweare.com. Once you get there, you just want to navigate to the store and it'll be one of the first items you see. Lastly, before we get started, I'd love it if you gave me some feedback about this episode in particular or review the entire podcast in general. You can do that on whichever platform you're listening to this from or on my personal social media pages. You're welcome to do it at either. I appreciate your support. You can also support this podcast at patreon.com/Brian Farr. I'll be putting a lot of extra material, behind the scenes content there that you can check out. And you'll also be able to support us financially. I appreciate your support. Let's jump straight into the rest of A Tribal Blessing. Again, featuring Keith Richardson. Enjoy. So what does your tribe need to be comprised of?
Glad you asked. So here is some characteristics my tribe is made of. I'll start there. Things that I really value from it is radical acceptance, which is just, for those who don't know what that term is, just to make it simple, it's people that accept me as is without judgment, or whether it's good or bad, taking me as I am, loving me as I am. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to grow. That don't mean that we don't have any standards for living, but right now, this is where I'm at. Radical acceptance.
So unconditional love as close to possible as you can find.
Very much so.
Gotcha.
Right. accountability is a big one for me, and also loyalty.
Good.
For those people who like numbers, this is how I would number it. Number one would be a place for honesty regarding struggles and success. I talked about how it's not just a place that celebrates my success or my successes, but a safe place to process my failures. So that is a benefit of a tribe. It's a place that you can have honesty regarding struggles and success. Two, I would say a perfect commitment to an imperfect person. Because these people understand that it's like, I am committed to you, but I understand that you're imperfect,
Absolutely.
Third, I would say mutual giving and receiving, reciprocity. I just talked about a few minutes ago how I wanted to give this to people. I didn't realize that even through that, sometimes it was through selfish gain because I wanted it so bad. You know what I'm saying? I wanted it, but I didn't even know how to ask for it. But now I understand the value of reciprocity, mutual giving and receiving. Like, listen, we're all in this thing together, depending on how big your tribe is. I already talked about radical acceptance and accountability. Those are very important. And the fifth one would be, for me, emotional nakedness.
All right.
And again, that one would fall closely with the first one, which is honesty regarding their struggles and successes. But emotional nakedness, that can go a little deep. This is why it's important to identify or define these relationships, because you can't do that everywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Emotional nakedness is a big thing, but I think it's vital. And sometimes people find that in their partners and their mate or whatever, but at the same time, I think that, and this is a whole nother conversation, sometimes even like your tribe, your mate can't be expected to be everything, but I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole nother
For
thing.
sure.
Because I've learned that even within my tribe, people have different characteristics that they're good at. They have different capacities and roles. Sometimes they don't have it all. And that's why I said my tribe, because generally my tribe has different qualities. Some of them out of my tribe, it's the supporter. Hey, listen, I can always depend on him to support, to come, to have your back. If you're doing anything, I got the supporter. The supporter may not be the one that keeps the secrets. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you got to know what your tribe is made of. So yeah, those are tribe qualities that I've personally experienced and that I would go on record to say that I feel like these are valuable for identifying any tribe, or if you're looking for one.
For sure. And that actually will pivot us right into the next piece of the conversation. But I'll just say this really quickly. I think, honestly, it's as simple as this for me, because you said you didn't want to go into it, but I'll touch on it real quick. When it comes down to the whole spouse thing, and I think sometimes it's as simple as there's certain things that in a husband and wife scenario, for instance, you have a guy that may be dealing with something that is unique to a guy that I wouldn't even be able to find as much of an answer through a more feminine spirit in terms of, personality, quality, things like that. Or even just like physical matters. I don't know that I want my wife coming to me with things that are feminine in nature to the point of even physicality. You know what I'm saying? Like if I have, and I'm trying to be as smooth as possible when I say this, but if there's certain things about us that are so different that I can't really relate to you with the issue, even in a physical manner, if we point blank, if we got different equipment and all this other stuff, I'm not going to know how to necessarily solve all of your issue because, there's a certain piece of it that's unique to you yourself. You know what I mean? And so we can take that beyond the physical, but I think that to think that I could solve all of her problems, or if we want to take it beyond spousal relationships, I know a lot of people won't agree with this, but the truth of the matter is, if I'm raising a daughter by myself, there's only so much I'm going to be able to give her as one parent. So
Right.
it ain't even really no way around it. But there's certain things I'm not going to be able to really, and I don't even know if I should have access to, if that makes sense, because I feel like it can get kind of weird. You know what I'm saying? There's certain things that and maybe this is going way deep, but all relationships have boundaries, right? And that's for a reason, or they're supposed to, let me put it that way. And we won't go down that trail. Maybe not. But all relationships are supposed to have boundaries. And so if I cross a boundary into something that I don't really know about, it's almost a violation. You understand what I'm saying? And so my thing is, sometimes you do have to go towards, and maybe that was vague as all get out, but there are certain things that I need to get from specific sources because I don't even have everything I need to fix all of, for instance, my wife's problems. You know what I'm saying? And so the argument you're making or the point that you're making actually is very clear to me, and I think it is something that needs to be stated for people that are confused about that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you spoke to that because, I'm not married, but what I used to think is that my mate had to have everything. You got to be my best friend, you got to be my lover, it was all those things, and it was just kind of like, I think after coming up short so many times, I kind of was like, wait, maybe these are unrealistic expectations, because who said that made your spouse any less valuable because they weren't everything? And that's why a tribe is important. You really spoke to this in certain ways. With your spouse being a female, she just can't relate to some things or whatever. And this is why I say a tribe is important, and knowing what each of those people bring to the table, because it's like, it would be ridiculous for you to expect your wife to be able to relate on a level as a man, because it's damn near impossible.
For sure.
She can listen to you. She can read all the books she wants to, 7 ways to be a man, but she would never be, And so
absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, you just can't relate. And I think that as far-fetched as it can sound, where it's like, we're using this example where it's all male and female, yes, of course she'll never be. But I think sometimes it's the same with characteristics in a person. It's like, hey, listen, they just don't possess that. And they don't have the capacity for that, and may never. And so me getting to a place to be able to accept that, I'm able to even properly align, not just define, but align the people in my tribe where they belong, you know what I'm saying, and what they have the capacity for. Because even when I said the person who may be the supporter might not be the secret keeper, well, that doesn't mean that I need to get rid of the person who can't keep all of my secrets. I just understand his or her capacity. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I know what they're good for. And so it's just like, I don't fool with them. No, and that's your choice. But I think that what you may learn is that may not even be something that they do maliciously. They may really actually value you as a person, care about you, and love you. Listen, they ain't keeping no secrets for you. They ain't keeping no secrets for them. They just don't have it.
Right. Oh, no, I know.
But what they do have the gift of is gab. So they use that gift in some ways that may be positive, and in other ways it just may not serve you, but you know what their capacity is, and you just know what to tell.
Absolutely.
And if you ain't ready for it to be told, you don't tell it to them.
Absolutely. Which comes into, I think, even personal boundaries. Like I was saying earlier, you do need to have boundaries established for all of your relationships. Every single relationship should have a boundary set in place in some type of way. And just to piggyback on what you're saying a little bit about the personality thing, sometimes I like to try to bring it physical just so it makes absolute sense before we can talk about things invisible. But, even when it comes down to the personality itself, the example that I thought about as you were talking before was how me and my wife are also almost typical, to be honest with you. She's very nurturing and caring, and I'm very much the person that's like, get up. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to nurture you if you come to me with certain things. I'm like, bro, what you doing? I'm much more of the disciplinarian. I'm much more of the person that's going to tell you what you don't want to hear. You know what I mean? And so I never forget this. I remember there's this older friend that I have. I'm saying, like, she has to be mid to late 70s, probably. She might even be 80, but she used to call me a good bit, and I haven't talked to her in a while, but she would always express to me how she's feeling about her grandchild and things like that. And I'll never forget one day she called me and she says, well, I just hate this and I want him to be able to do this, blah, blah, blah. She's going on and on. And this must have been the last time she could just put up with me anymore. I said, well, listen, here's the thing. This is the problem. This is how you solve it. This is what he needs to do, etc. Right? I'm a problem solver. She literally said to me, I don't think I want to call you no more. I'm going to start talking to your wife because you always got to answer. I just want to vent. It was just funny to me. I just bust out laughing, but I'm like, yo, that's like, but again, my capacity isn't so much so to just nurture what you're saying and just allow you to lay in the bed of sorrow for, you know what I mean, for ever how long. I'm like, no, get up. It ain't that difficult. Let's get
Right.
out of here. You know what I mean? So that's much more of my personality. And so even with that being stated, it's just, again, proof positive to what you're saying. Everybody doesn't have the capacity for certain things, and it's not to say that I couldn't be caring for a moment, but it's not where I rest. That's not my resting norm. You know what I'm saying? And so,
Yeah, and it could almost take me on a whole other rabbit trail when it comes to our choosing our romantic partners, because it's like, I think sometimes instead of spending so much time, and it could be platonic and romantic relationships, but I think that instead of trying to spend so much time reconstructing people's capacities and identities and who they are, I think that it would serve us better to be able to accept what that is. You know what I'm saying? And
absolutely.
The work that we can do is define and align those relationships instead of trying to change that, because sometimes it's like, I'm not supposed to change that. And like I said, that same person that I'll be like, can't keep the secrets, that has the gift of gab, that actually might be a positive attribute somewhere in their lives. Or that person who got the gift of gab might be the one who's actually the supporter. But I'm going to tell you that running their mouth works when I have something that I need people to show up for.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you run your mouth, because you're the one who can
absolutely.
rally all the people together, because you talk all the time. You can't keep nothing. You know he's doing this, and you know he's having
absolutely.
This. But look how that same thing that could be perceived negatively, if you put it in the right place, hey, listen, I know what to tell you. I know to tell you when I need support. I need people to show up, because what you do well is talk.
Or you need a good police report filled out. Yeah.
Right. Or you need some information, because you know.
Absolutely. You need an informant.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm not in the business of trying to completely reconstruct people's identities or characteristics. And that's also, when I talk about radical acceptance, that falls over into the mutual giving and receiving. I expect that, but I give that. So I accept you as you are. Now, that don't mean all those parts serve parts of me, because
absolutely.
I have certain standards and boundaries, as
absolutely.
you just spoke to a minute ago. You have boundaries. That's not without a standard or a boundary, but that just means that, hey, listen, what I'm not in the business of is changing you and your reality, because I'm accepting you as is. Now, if that changes over time, then grand. If it doesn't, guess what? I already worked around that. It's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So.
And I'll say this too, and we're going to have to pivot after this, but one thing that's coming to my mind, even as you're talking, is proper placement. And so, maybe we'll use that to talk about something else in a second here, but it's literally so important. I think I used to say it this way: if you take a hammer and if you decide it's something that you should discipline your kids with, you're going to jail. You know what I'm saying? If you take that same hammer and you put it in place of a utensil that you're supposed to use to drive something into the wall, such as a nail, etc., now you've made a blessing out of something that was abusive a second ago. You know what I mean? And so proper placement concerning people in your life is so important. I'll never forget, and I don't even share this type of stuff publicly, but I remember I was in one stage of my life and I was in a predicament to where I probably was being hated a good bit. And one of the things that came to me that I really felt speak from within me during that time was not necessarily that I was not in the right place, but I was playing the wrong position. And that can make a whole lot of difference in, again, how you see an actual person. And until you, first of all, like you're saying, have radical acceptance, because two things are going to happen. Either I'm going to love you unconditionally, accept you for what you are, and then decide that you don't fit, or I'm going to love you unconditionally, accept you for what you are, and then by way of that honesty, learn how to properly place you in my life. You know what I mean? And both of those are okay, but that's what needs to happen. Because if somebody just doesn't fit into a tribe or something like that, it's no offense that should be taken. It's just, this is not where I'm going. We don't really have the ability to go in the same direction. And so, yeah, we're not necessarily fitting together according to certain things. But again, even if I have somebody that I mesh well with, it's still important that I place them properly, or I will not get the value out of something. And that's how you end up throwing treasure away, considering treasure as trash. You understand what I'm saying? Because it wasn't placed properly. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. So are there different layers to a tribe? And we'll make this a really quick one, and then I'll have one more question after this, hopefully. What are the layers to a tribe? So does it need to be multifaceted, not in just like personality type, but maybe age groups? I'll just jump straight to it. I heard before that maybe it's important that you have somebody that can pull you up, give you a hand up, somebody that you can spar with. And so you're talking about a peer relationship, and then always somebody that you can pour into. Now, I don't know if the person that you can pour into would necessarily have to fit into your tribe, but considering a tribe specifically, are there different levels to it, or what dynamics do you feel like you need? And that's saying even if you don't feel like you have all of it yourself, but what dynamics do you feel like would make up the perfect tribe?
Okay. So to answer all of them, even with you saying about the giving part, that's how you get the most out of your tribe. I know I'm starting at a random place, but that is how you get the most out of your tribe, because it should be a place where your tribe gets something out of pouring into you as well as you do out of pouring something into them. So I do feel like that's how you get the most benefit out of your tribe. You have spaces where you can do both. And sometimes it's not all with the same people. So to go back to the layers of your tribe, for me, my tribe, for lack of better words, I'll say it's very colorful. I have people that are older that really pour into me, but surprisingly, again, like I said, even in those situations, there's something that I can give to them, because I'm in an age, in a stage in my life where maybe they might have been living longer than me, but the world as they know it has changed. So I have something to give too. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So it's mutually beneficial, but I have older people in my tribe. I have people about my age, maybe one that is younger than me. But what I also wanted to say with that is, with the layers of your tribe also doesn't have to be friends with each other. They may know that each other exists, but that's not necessarily a requirement for your tribe for them to all be friends. Everybody wants to think that your tribe all got to be at the same cookout, and that's not the case, because some of my tribe may not necessarily relate to each other, but have something that you guys benefit from within that relationship. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, yeah, but some of my tribe, they have not met. Some of them may never. And what I've learned is that's okay. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
It wouldn't be shocking for them to hear me mention one of those people, because most times they hear me mention, one another or whatever. But each of those connections are strong enough for them to understand it. Like, listen, y'all don't have to be friends in order for me to be friends. And that doesn't mean that they have anything against each other. They're not connected. You know what I'm saying? So.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very important point that you're bringing up, because I think a lot of time when people hear the word tribe, and you almost get these gangster references that might come to your head, and you have this Drake line that might come to your head, like no new friends, or you have people that's like keep your circle tight and things like that, and you almost get a vision or a picture of a clique. You know what I mean? Or a gang or something like that.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that your tribe isn't necessarily comprised of people that even know each other. That honestly, what I'm pulling from it is that if they met each other, they might not even like each other.
They might not. They truly might not. And some of my tribe, for me, knowing how different they are, I'll be like, y'all probably would like each other or wouldn't work. Or what I've found out with my tribe or my experience with relationships, hey, just because someone gives me access to them doesn't mean that person is granting your other tribe members access to them in that way. So, no.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's like, no, I give you access. You're in my tribe. You get to call me on random times and when you want to, whatever. But there are other people that them your friends. They're not my friends. And yeah, I don't have to be up in arms about it, but I think the way we've defined it is based off how you're saying, like, we see this picture, my clique tight, where in the music videos, they all out at the club together, but that's not reality, because all my tribe don't even go to the club. Well, and I don't.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, we don't all have same thing in order for us to be a tribe. Like, I think that the way people have shown tribes as a culture typically lends to associates. People you can do that with. You can hang out with. Y'all have things in common. And I think that's where we get it mixed up. It's like, hey, what we have in common is that we work at the same place and we're always here and we have a common goal. So you get my time, my talents. And just because you get that don't mean that you get me. You may get the authentic me, but my transparency belongs to my tribe. So It's like, just because we go out to the club together, that don't mean that we're friends. We have something in common. Absolutely. Or just because we work at this organization, just because we go to church together, that's a whole other story where it just automatically make people, oh, you're a family. No, you're not. But I'm not going to land there because I got to move on. But but no, it doesn't. And so I've been learning even over this last year what it means to be authentic everywhere, but I am transparent with my tribe. I'm very much so transparent with my tribe.
Wow. And so
you might get my time, my talent, but my tribe gets me.
I think that's really good. I think it's a really good distinction. And I think it goes to say also, right here that it's a multifaceted group. It's a diverse group. It's people that I feel like pull on different sides of you. Somebody that you can, if I can say, be lazy with on one side, or somebody that does just like to go out and you all do whatever you do together. And if that's partying or video games or whatever the situation is, and, as long as it's a relationship of value, again, where there's transparency and then it's also reciprocal, then those are things to look at to whether or not you consider somebody a tribe. And I think that, again, it also means that it could be a family member, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, and it won't always be. You know what I mean? And so not to even put limits on a person, like, as you're saying, some people equate you to family because you associate together or you believe the same thing or something like that. I mean, it's cool to have some form of camaraderie, with people, but at the same time, in and of itself, it's not worthy of the term family. And then you have family who will quote themselves to be your family because of the bloodline, and you're nowhere near family in terms of your actual relation. And so I think you have to be honest enough to build your tribe in a way. You can't force it. And that's one thing I do believe. You can't force a tribe. You know what I mean? It has to be something that, as we were saying before, the puzzle pieces have to fit, and it has to start off with that honesty, that radical acceptance at the top of it. And it has to just fall in line. It has to fall together based upon those elements.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you reiterated that point, because when I realized for myself that would make my life so much easier when I started with acceptance, so that I knew where to place people instead of trying to fix them to what would fit. And it's like, no, you can't force it, because even if you do it for me temporarily, at some point it'll run out. You'll get tired. And I've experienced that in friendships and romantic relationships. It's like, listen, don't try to make it fit. You do not try to make it fit. Let them be them, and you go from there. And I realized that was a reflection of me and sometimes our own sense of self-worth. Also, I think it shows with our own insecurities and stuff like this. So it's like, I'm going to make this fit. I'm going to make this work, or I'm going to make it my duty to change the way you show up in the world, because I need you to show up in my world this way, because this is what I need you to be. This is what I expect you to be. So instead of me being patient enough to figure out if this is where you're going to fit, or to wait on the person who actually fits there, then I'm going to try to craft it. And it never works. Never.
Absolutely.
I'll say never.
Oh, no, absolutely. You can't force a fit. And again, it brings my mind all the way back to what I was saying before. Sometimes you can even be in the right relationship or in the right situation, and if you're playing the wrong position, you'll get tossed, or you'll want to toss the situation simply because you aren't playing the right position. With all of that being said, let's pivot to the last question as quickly as possible. Do you find your tribe, or does your tribe find you?
That's such a good question. I think it is both.
All right.
Because I think that what I've learned is through me doing my own self-work, my own transformation and soul work, then I do attract certain things and I attract certain people. So those people typically will start to gravitate towards me, but some of them have pursued me. Sometimes we look at that as just like, oh, people who we date. But no, sometimes even in my platonic friendships, it's like my tribe has found me. And then sometimes I've been like, hey, yeah, I've been the one who picked up on their energy or characteristics or whatever, and then I pursued them, but it worked. You know what I'm saying? I didn't force
Sure.
it. So I don't think that there's a one size fits all in that. I think that sometimes it's 50-50. Sometimes it's, and I think it's very important for it to be that way. You know why? Because when we talk about one of the characteristics of a tribe is reciprocity, I think that it's important that both people see the importance of that relationship, because this don't need to be one-sided. You feel me? And so
Absolutely.
I think that's one way that it helps you to eliminate that, because it's like, we both saw how beneficial this connection would be.
Absolutely. I think for myself, I would agree that I do believe it goes both ways. I think that would be a part A to the question. My part B would be then, and check this out, can you find your tribe, or can your tribe find you before you find yourself?
So I would say no, but I'm going to say most times. I said no because most times it doesn't end up working, because if they're attached to a version of you, that's what they expect. So sometimes if you grow out of it. You know what I'm saying? Or you realize, like, how in the hell did I end up?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, how? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And like I said, again, this is another one of those situations where I'm like, that wasn't just romantic relationship for me. That wasn't just my boo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that
for sure.
That was me with friendships. It's like, what? How in the hell? Like, no. But I didn't know me, and so the way I was showing up in the world, I don't even think was always a representation of who I truly was or my authentic self. So yeah, I'm a little on the no side. Sometimes it can happen. These people can end up growing with you through that transition. But I would say those are more so one-offs. Let's say miracles. Like, that's one of them things that I'll be like, let's go in the miracle jar for me.
For sure. It will probably be some type of divine intervention, is what you're saying. Probably to, yeah, but to probably actually aid you, you know what I mean, in a time of need. I think it is a such thing of really being lost, you know what I mean? And you don't really know yourself. You don't know up from down.
Right.
And so in that scenario, there's so many elements of this life you cannot control. You can't control what you were born into, who you were born to, as far as people, the circumstances, things like that. And sometimes what you're born into and where you're born is a far stretch from what you're going to be. And so in those cases, you almost need divine intervention to get you to where you're going, because, of how we are as humans. I mean, you would honestly, without being a person that's really brave enough to listen to your internal self, you're going to just go along with the patterns that have already been established before you got there. And, how will you know unless, again, you gain that type of strength to where something's speaking to you on the inside and bothering you enough to where you get brave enough to go ahead and follow that? Or again, there has to be some type of divine intervention. There might be somebody that sees what you don't see in yourself in you, because it's in them. You know what I mean? And that will be one of those intervening moments, where they'll say, okay, you might not see it, man, but I think you could coach, you could talk, I think you're a leader. And so those become those intervening moments. But I think I would agree with the whole thing about essentially it going both ways. Part A having to do with you find it, it finds you. But at the same time, I think it's very hard to find a tribe if you don't know who you are. And I made a statement a while back, I think on social media, where I was saying, like, most of the world does not treat you according to who you are. They treat you according to who you're being, right?
Yeah.
And so if you aren't being yourself, they can't treat you accordingly. You know what I mean? And there's some nuance to that whole statement too. It's not just a black and white situation. There's some exceptions and all that stuff, as we're saying, even about the whole intervention side of it. But for the most part, most people are going to treat you like you're behaving, and I started realizing at one point in life, if I don't start being what I am, I'm never going to get out of life what I'm even attempting or what I even desire, because I start looking at different words, right? Like behave. Right. To me, behavior is more than just, something that we look at as, okay, how is this person acting right now? That's one level of it. But I almost separated it out to say this. I looked at two words that's within that one word. That's be and have. Right. And so behavior is bigger than what we think, because whatever you can be is what you're going to have, essentially. If you look at the word become, whatever you are being is naturally what's going to come to you. And so here's the thing, and I'll just emphasize a little bit what you're saying about it normally doesn't work. Here's the problem with manipulation. And for those of us who think we're able to outsmart this whole system of things to where, well, I'll just be this and then I'll be able to get this, right? Well, there's a time to where that runs out. And it's a tiresome thing for you to be pretending so much. You know what I mean? When you talk about burnout, when you talk about all the false narratives and things like that you have to live in order to keep up an image so you can keep certain people around you, that's an entire route you do not want to go, because that's the type of route that destroys you from the inside, right? That's the type of route that is short term. And so it doesn't pay to do things that route. It always pays to be authentic. It always pays to do things in the right way concerning all of that. But I do believe that it's both. It's so much, Keith, and I'm trying not to touch on all of it. But to me, it's very vital that you remain yourself and allow that to find you. Yeah.
And I think that's when also when you found your tribe, because with your tribe, I think that there's something to be said about the state that you're in and how they can accept that, but really also be holding you accountable to parts of your higher self. And it's so much that we could say about it, because if I look back and be like, well, you've had all these friends over the years, or you had a tribe, blah, blah, and I'm like, no, that wasn't my tribe. Those were people that I experienced, or associates, or church people. Because I was going to say friends, and it's just like, and here's the thing, I won't minimize those experiences by acting like they weren't vital, because I got a lot out of those too. You know what I'm saying? And I just didn't know at the time what to call them. So without being able to define and align them, I put them in places, and I had expectations that didn't belong in those connections or relationships. So there was valuable things that I got out of them. They were necessary, and some of the relationships, platonic and romantic, they were really good mirrors, because they showed me, and I was able to see. And for some of the areas that I felt wrong and all these other injustices that I could just be standing on the mountaintop fighting about, it helped me disarm myself, because I was just like, hey, this is what this was for. This is what they were for, and this is why you were attracting it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so, like I said, I won't minimize those experiences, but now actually knowing what a tribe is, I think that I've finally gotten to a place where I'm like, got it. This is a tribe. Now Absolutely. This is a tribe.
Tell us what you got going on, anything you want to advertise about yourself, and then we'll get out of here.
Man, well, I will just end by really saying thanks again for having me, man. I am currently in school, developing myself, just adding to my skills so that I can even better serve my clients and even my coaching tribe. So that's what I'm doing now. But, if you want to find me, you can find me at The Image Adjuster on Instagram. You can chat there if you have any questions, or if you are looking for a coach, you can find me at imageadjusters.com for those who have trouble, because I don't know, we always have this thing with that name. It is exactly the way I said it, Image, IMAGE, adjusters.com. That's really what I got, man.
Cool. Well, yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight on relationships and, everything else that you had to share, and on coaching itself. And so we'll have to get you on sometime in the future. I'm going to go ahead and call him the relationship coach. He won't know why or anything. We'll just see how true that is in about 5 to 10 years. We'll see how accurate I am. But so, yeah, I've enjoyed having you on, man. I always enjoy the conversation. And I mean, y'all would have to really probably get the most out of a conversation. We have to sit in front of a crowd for like 2-3 hours, you know what I mean? And just kind of go with it. And well, it's been 2 hours. We had to go longer than that to really dive into it.
Yeah, we can we'll extract every corner of a conversation.
Absolutely. And it's something about, coaches or leaders or talkers that make talkers talk, you know what I mean? And so, again, just gave y'all a little chance to eavesdrop on it. And yeah, man, I appreciate you. And y'all follow him, check him out, and we'll do this again sometime in the future. And like I said, I'll definitely be back to check in and see how accurate my prediction is. Yeah, thank you all for listening. As always, I pray that your way be made prosperous. That's what I'm here for. And until next time.